Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, we are from Group 6. Here we will explain about metadiscourse and culture, namely metadiscourse in practice. The members are Livani Tri Ramdani and Santoso.
When we talk about culture, globalization has increased interaction between culture and language, leading to the question of whether writers in non-English writing culture have rhetorical habits that influence their writing in English. So this chapter will highlight how metadiscourse is used in other languages and by a speaker of those languages writing in English. Next is Metadiscourse cross-language research that directly confront of the way different writing cultures use metadiscourse shows that compared to other languages, Anglo-American academic English tends to, and you can read in screen. Next is this comparative studies discuss how culture influence the use of metadiscourse, especially in the context of academic writing between English and Chinese. And examples. Pluto and the Chinese study of the way Chinese authors scholars refer to earlier texts in their academic writings. Their research suggests that English writers tend to use more recent coedition, where Chinese language writer might be more tied to traditional and classical writing to the past. However, this could also be due to differential access to video large source information. Next, the comparative study explains how to use methodological different editorial in Spanish and English. They found Spanish writers tended to use more textual methodological while English writers preferred interpretational methodological. These differences reflect their respective language style and culture. In conclusion, there are important differences in cultural rhetorical practice and influence of genre of the use of methodological in that era. For the comparative study, Moroni 2004 discussed the different use of metadiscourse between articles in English and Spanish, especially in historical in the field of business and economy. In the study, it identified three levels of clarity in presenting these transition markers. Number one, explicit labels. Words used to refer back to things that have been discussed previously in writing or speaking. That is, by using explicit label, the author gives reader clues about how they should understand or interpret the next part of the writing. Fusible, when the said elements are made explicit by using proform such as this and all those in English. Or esto, it means this, eso, that, ello, that, aquí, here, and lo cual, the in Spanish. The reader does not always know exactly which part of the discourse this item referred to. The labels signal important directional shift in the development of the discourse. Implicit label. Three implicit labels. When the reference item is left implicit and is more conjunction in English and Spanish, as well as in some linking paraphrase. This allow reader to determine from where in the previous discourse the conclusion should be drawn. Okay, last one is Study of American Finnish College Study in Essay by Grimor McCutcheon and Stephenson, 1993. Found both groups use different type of metadiscourse. However, Finnish study use more metadiscourse per line than American students. They also used edited marker and reduction work more frequently.
The next slide, metadiscourse and writing in English. Many texts written in English have been researched by authors from different cultural backgrounds. These studies assume that the use of metadiscourse varies according to cultural practice, even within the same genre, and traces of this practice can be found in writers' use of English. Okay, the next slide, interactive metadiscourse in English. Interactive metadiscourse show the authors to readers. and help them to understand the content of the writing better. According to Maurenen, this interactive meta-discourse is valuable but not essential. A writer may choose to overlay signal interconnection between utterance when they need to explicitly limit the reader's interpretation. Native English speakers, like Americans, have a greater interest in guiding and directing the reader and in making the author's presence felt in the text. This gives the impression that they have a greater sense of audience and seeks to condition the reader's interpretation by quoting them clearly or plain. Meanwhile, when Finlandia people write or speak in English, they are rhetorically putic and implicit. The message conveyed is not clear. This is interpreted as a polite attitude because they treat the reader as an intelligent creature. So there is no need to write or say things that are too clear. On the other hand, writers who are not explicit only show their own wisdom and make it difficult for readers to follow the writer's talk. This can happen if the reader is able to do the task, but if the reader cannot follow the argument, that will be the problem. This happened because of Maurenian speculation that the result of his research emerged from different cultural preference and norms of politeness and rhetorical acerbigness. Okay, the next slide. Interactive metadiscourse in English consists of transition and frame markers. The first, transition. Transition is logical connectors that reveal semantic relationship between main clause or sentences and help readers interpret relationship between ideas. The example, in addition, but, and, moreover, furthermore, therefore, on the other hand. Hinkle found that students from China, Korea, Vietnam, Arabic, Japan significantly use phrase-level transition such as and, but, yet, and so on more, compared to a group of native English speakers who use sentences very long and complicated. Among Europe, students found Swedish writers use less logical connectors when writing in English. The second, frame markers. Frame markers are used primarily to organize text for the reader. Frame markers are a cover term for various linguistic devices and can be further classified into four subtypes according to their function: sequence, topicalizer, discourse label, and announcer. The example, finally, second, my purpose, firstly, to sum up, in short, return to, in regard to, lastly. The next slide, interactional metadiscourse in English. Interactional metadiscourse is the part of metadiscourse that help writers control the flow of information and connect with readers. Interactional metadiscourse in English consists of self-mention, booster, hedges, and engagement markers. And the first one is self-mention. Self-mention is often believed by Asian students who like a collectivistic way of expressing identity or opinions, avoiding self-mention to discourage direct involvement and the author's view of this. For example, is um, first person pronouns, direct involvement of right, I, me, my, mind. For these sentences, when I was in my music class, I could forget about all my troubles. I like playing the violin so much that I couldn't wait to go to the university to study. But my father said that I had to be a doctor, and I wanted to run away from my house. Okay, the second consists of interactional metadiscourse in English is booster. Booster, these are used to strengthen writing or express a stronger opinions. For example, certainly, demonstrate, really, totally, always. And for example, in sentences, is parents always encourage their children to study the major that will be needed by a lot more companies in the future, so that they could get jobs and earn a lot more money after they graduate from the university. There are a lot of people who totally had their jobs and they are very miserable. Okay, the third consists of introductional meta discourse in English is Hedges. Metadiscourse here concerns the author attempt to control the level personality in a text and establish a suitable relationship with him. Data, arguments, and audience marks the level of intimacy, thus expression of attitude, that is communication of commitment, and to what extent reader engagement. For example, downtoners, fairly, almost, hardly, frequent adverb, usually, sometimes, hedges, probably, perhaps, may. And for example, in the sentence, the first, she probably won't attend the meeting, but we should still send her an invitation. And the second, it's possible that the project will be delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. The last consists of introduction of discourse in English is engagement markers. Second person pronouns, you, your, yourself, rhetorical question, necessary models, and assumptiveness, of course, obviously. And for example, in the sentences, is if you are an undergraduate student, you may have difficulty choosing a major field. You have to try to find jobs that have both your interest and can satisfy your living. You need to hear your parents' word like I did, but you cannot let your parents control you. Remember, this is your life and you need to do what you need to do. Okay, the last of introductional meta discourse in English is more on hedges and booster. Hedges and booster generally appears as the most frequent occurrences using introductional meta discourse markers in expert studies authors take in English. This is the principal means by which the writer can use English flexible to take a stand both their preposition and their audience and can have quite an impact influence the reader's assessment, both referential and effective text aspect. However, they are generally recognized as such as difficult for students to obtain. This is not just because of hedging, and improvement can be expressed in a variety of different ways, but also because they can convey a variety of different meanings, give hence the author's belief in the correctness of the information and his contribution relationship with readers. Okay, the conclusion is meta-discourse and culture. Overall, it is important to understand that culture and language are interrelated, but not everyone from the same culture will communicate in the same way. We must treat each individual uniquely and not make assumptions based on their culture. And every piece of writing will always have differences, even though